Thank you very much for the introduction again. So today I'm going to be very brief, very short presentation which gives us more opportunity to discuss. I'm going to talk about a project of us where we, of UN Environment, where we try to demonstrate, or we would like to demonstrate electric motorcycles in Kenya. And I'm just going to tell you about some facts, some opportunities, some challenges. In fact, there are a lot of opportunities, and there are some challenges. We kind of believe that these challenges, in case of electric two-wheelers, are actually not that big. The biggest challenge is that the product we need in Africa is not available right now. This is the biggest challenge. But I believe that this product is not very complicated, and it's not very much out of reach. It is just not here, partly because companies so far didn't really anticipate this market, because this market is not so old. This market is growing very quickly, and I think this is reason number one. And reason number two is, compared to classic motorcycle markets like in Vietnam or in China, the African motorcycle market is still very small. Even though in the countries itself you see motorcycles everywhere, but compared to Vietnam or compared to China or compared to Philippines, the motorcycle market is still pretty small. I'm just starting with some pictures to give you an idea what this motorcycle needs to do, what capabilities it needs to have, because this is the basic problem. The capabilities needed in Africa, in Kenya, in Rwanda, in Uganda, and I think also to some extent in Egypt, because I see a lot of motorcycle taxis here in Cairo. Yeah? I think these specifications are very much different from places where already today a lot of electric motorcycles are on the road. Huh? I'm talking about China. I think there's something like 200 million electric scooters on the road. They cost nothing. It's like $400, $500, $600. You can buy them on Alibaba. But the specifications of these two-wheelers, they are not what is needed in for example, in Africa. So these are the guys I'm talking about, the motorcycle taxi drivers, and you see them everywhere. They are basically a very basic mode of transportation. I'm using them from time to time if I need to go to CBD Nairobi, since CBD Nairobi is completely jammed. This is the actual only way to do it in like half an hour from UN to CBD. Otherwise, this could easily take you 1.5 hours. They are used in the cities, but they are also used outside the cities, meaning on rough roads, with no tarmac, with heavy loads, and also long distance. And this is a combination so far which doesn't really exist. Now, what we did is, what this graph is showing is the motorcycle stock from the year 2000 to the year 2017. That's historic data. So what you basically see that between 2000 and 2016, the motorcycle fleet tripled. Yeah? And this growth is set to be more or less the same in the future. There is a pretty big or pretty large probability that, again, in the next 30 years, this stock will triple. So we are talking about more than a million motorcycles by 2050. Now we have around 500,000 motorcycles on the road in Kenya. We basically went on the road ourselves and gathered data, because this is also something which is very valuable and which is not available like this. You need to gather data. You need to get an idea what product is actually needed. So what we did is we asked the Boda drivers. We asked them with a questionnaire. We developed a questionnaire. So this sample size is only 40 drivers. Yeah, I'm not claiming to be I'm not claiming to do a dissertation with this, but it's 40 drivers. That's already something. You get an idea of what is happening, yeah? So what we learned is the average price of a new motorcycle which is used by the taxi drivers today is about $1,000, $1,100. These motorcycles are either Indian, Bajaj, or Chinese motorcycles, Typhoon, Hero. A lot of the brands on the road in Kenya are also on the road here in Cairo. $1,100 is really not very much for such a pretty okay motorcycle. I mean, if you look at the European market, you wouldn't get any motorcycle for $1,100. I think it's maybe starting at $4,000, $5,000, $6,000, something like this. Those taxi drivers, they are running around 100 kilometers every day. So this is quite a distance, and it is very different from what, for example, the scooters are doing in the Southeast Asian and Asian countries, because they are used for private use. So basically commuting to and from work. They are probably doing 25, 30, 40 kilometers a day. In Nairobi, it's about 110 kilometers. At the end, this is just a matter of the size of the battery, yeah? So we are talking maybe about a 6 kilowatt hour battery, something like this. Average fuel consumption of the motorcycles used right now, it's 4 liters per 100 kilometers. Actually a lot, yeah? If you see that a recent small car can do 5 liters, 6 liters per 100 kilometer under normal driving conditions, then 4 liters per 100 kilometer for a motorcycle is actually a lot. Max load 250 kilograms. This is something which is really needed. It's just not being one person on a motorcycle, but 2 persons plus baggage, or even 3 persons. Plus, they also need to be pretty fast. So in China, for example, a lot of the electric scooters, they are very slow. They have a maximum speed of like 40 kilometers per hour, and this is due to the fact that they fall under some kind of bicycle regulation. Yeah? So they cannot go faster. This would not be a good idea to bring this on the market, for example, in Kenya, yeah? Because this will just be another obstacle on the road. Those taxi drivers, they make a turnover of maybe $15 a day. They have average fuel costs of about $4, $4.20, and they spend about $12 per month in terms of maintenance. So this is basically the setup. Yeah? This is our baseline. This is what we need to compete with. So now, if you look at an electric motorcycle, and if you assume that somebody could provide that electric motorcycle produced in relatively big numbers at $2,500, basically more than twice as expensive as a normal conventional motorcycle. Yeah? If you now assume that this could drop to, let's say, $1,700 by 2025, $1,500 by 2030. If you look at the gasoline price in Kenya, $1.1 per liter. If you look at the electricity price, 20 cents per kilowatt hour. If you do this calculation over 3 years, basically taking everything into account, the price of the motorcycle, the fuel cost of the motorcycle, the maintenance cost of the motorcycle, and even the resale value. Let's say after 3 years, you have a resale value of 30%. That's maybe optimistic, because a lot of these motorcycles used on the Kenyan market, they are just scrap after 3 years. Yeah? Because they are running high mileages, they are running on bad roads, and it's just like frames are cracking, whatever. They are in a condition that they are not worth much. Last but not least, on a battery electric motorcycle, you could assume that maintenance cost is much lower, yeah? Because you have much less moving parts. You don't need to buy spark plugs, stuff like this. So it's much simpler, yeah? Then, now the interesting thing is total cost of ownership already today would be lower over 3 years of that electric motorcycle compared to the conventional motorcycle, yeah? So I think that is very interesting. If you look at payback times, 2018, based on these assumptions, it's 2-year payback time. That would be an acceptable payback time even for a boda driver in Kenya. if you then anticipate the costs coming down and so on, it is clear that by 2025, there should be no other motorcycles on the road because they're just the better offer to the one who is using them. So if you now look on the macro level, like on the Kenya level, what would that lead to? It is interesting. You can really save substantial amounts of CO2 with these kind of technology. If you assume that by 2030, half of the fleet would be, or half of the new vehicles would be electric motorcycles, and by 2040, 100% of the new motorcycles coming to the market are electric. And then the motorcycle market has a quick turnover because they are only 3, 4, 5 years in lifetime. Yeah? You save a lot of energy, you save a lot of emissions, and you also save a lot of money in the end. So why not doing this? And now I'm coming back to the question I started my presentation with. We need that product. And this is really the question, who can provide that motorcycle? $2,500, that's not a cemented price. Be that $3,000 at the beginning. But I really believe this is not something which is completely out of scope. This is something which is perfectly doable. And I think colleagues from India, colleagues from China, colleagues from those countries which have the knowledge in producing massive amounts of relatively cheap vehicles, I mean, they should really look at this. Next thing, which bank could provide an acceptable loan which doesn't differ from the normal boda loan, yeah? A lot of banks in Kenya, they have products in their portfolio which are tailored to motorcycle taxi drivers. Taxi driver needs to show that he's a little bit liquid. Taxi driver needs to come with $300 down payment. Then the bank issues a loan for 6 months or 12 months at relatively high interest rate. But this is business as usual, yeah? So now the question is, would there be a bank who would just accept longer payback time? Because then the boda driver would have even more money in the pocket on a daily basis because he spends less on maintenance and fuel, about the same on paying back the upfront costs for the motorcycle, but on the long run, he's doing a good business. So, yeah, that's really the question. Who can do this? I mean, I think it's not so difficult. Last question, what is the business model for recharging? I think there are two options. Recharging with motorcycles in general is not a big deal because the battery is not big. 6 kilowatt-hour battery you could charge in like 3 hours, 5 hours with a normal, pretty low power plug. It even makes sense to think about solar recharging. Yeah? A 300-watt solar panel, yeah, would be able in 10 hours to charge a 3 kilowatt-hour battery. Now you would need two panels, and you can charge this. 2 panels, 300 watt, it's probably $600 or something like this. I mean, it is some money, but this could be, again, a business because there could be a guy charging motorcycle batteries. And I think these are all things which can very well work in this environment. Yeah? Another idea would be battery swapping, that basically the ownership of the battery rests with the charging, let's call it charging company, yeah? And the charging company sells filled batteries like we buy a full tank of gasoline at the petrol station, yeah? So basically that the boda driver wouldn't even see the costs of the battery. This would also be an interesting system, but it requires some kind of trust, yeah? You need to trust that because you're buying a motorcycle without battery. So if the charging station goes bankrupt, you've got a motorcycle you can't drive with. But anyway, I think these are all very interesting things, and I don't think it's not rocket science, not at all. Yeah, that's all actually. Thanks.